Okay, so we are now reconvening the open session of our board meeting for the Menlo Park Fire Protection District. And why don't we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance. Oh, sorry. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America, and to the republic
for
for which it stands, one nation,
under
under God, indivisible,
with
with
liberty
and
and
justice for all.
all. Okay, on our next item, we do have a reportable action from our closed session. And that action is that a tentative agreement on a successor MOU has been reached with ASME Local 829. The tentative agreement in the form of a red line strike through MOU will be placed on the district's website and sunshined for 30 days. And the board will consider approval of the new MOU with AFSCME in an open session at its next regular board meeting on February 21st, 2023. Michelle, do I need to take public comment on the reportable item?
No, you do not.
Okay, so then we will move on to public comment number 2. So if you have if anyone wants to make any public comment about items that are not on the agenda, this is the time to do that. Please raise your hand. Michelle, do you see any hands raised?
No, you can raise your hand, and if you called in, you could press *9.
Yes.
And Director Crawley, I see none. You may continue.
Great, then I'm going to close public comment number 2, and then we'll go to our first item, which is the fire chief's report, and to discuss that as well, if needed, and give direction if needed. Chief?
Great, thank you, Director Crawley. Happy New Year, everyone. Our first report of 2023. Directors, members of our staff, members of the public that are listening in, pleased to bring you an update on what's happening in the fire district. The initial thing is just to talk about our COVID impacts. I think I will rewrite this paragraph in February, so it's a little bit more contemporary to what's going on now, rather than just repeating it over and over again with the same language. The only thing new for us really is that we have 3 COVID positives in our workforce since our last meeting, which is not actually too bad. We're not seeing any impacts at work with staffing. We're not seeing any impacts with our ambulance transport. The big issue that we had during the height of COVID was increased wall times at the hospitals with the overload on the ERs, but not an issue now, as this turns from a pandemic to an endemic, and people are just getting used to having the virus around us. Some other items, as we were ringing in the new year, we were actually incredibly busy, and so that brings us into just an update for the board and the public on storm preparedness. Obviously, on December 31st, as everyone's aware, we had some pretty significant storms come through and some pretty big challenges. And I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the preparations that our employees did as a result of the storms coming in, and just to let you know what was going on behind the scenes. On December 31st, prior to our significant issues that came up as the San Francisco Creek overflowed, we had already done some preparations in advance of that and staffed up. So our additional staffing that we had staffed at the beginning of shift change that morning is we added staffing to one of our squads. We staffed up 2 of our Swiftwater boats with 4 people in total. Chief Coyle returned to the district to provide some command structure. We had Andres Acevedo that was out and about and patrolling the district. And as well as that, serving as a liaison, as we had a number of Zoom calls, EOCs standing up. There was, as we all know, quite a bit going on. We had some somewhat significant issues in Weekend Acres. The creek was pretty significant over there, but most of the damage that occurred up there was actually from water and runoff coming from down the hills, not necessarily coming from up and out of the creek. We had some issues at the Hope Chaucer Bridge that was closed down. We're really finding that, especially with the significant rains, there was a lot of debris that was clogging up any man-made obstructions. Usually that's bridges, was creating some pretty significant issues. And then just to the east of that, as the creek makes its turn over in the area of Woodland and Euclid, the creek actually came up and over its banks, was impacting the Willows neighborhood and into the East Palo Alto area there. And then we had flooding in that neighborhood and then throughout East Palo Alto and in some of the unincorporated areas of the county. So, some of the things that were going on, typically what we would see is the, San Mateo County DEM would be notifying people. I think the storm was, or at least the degree of the storm was a little bit unanticipated on their part. As we all know, there weren't any alerts coming out until a little bit after the fact. That was pretty quickly rectified by them as the storm went on throughout the week. But just on that initial first day, the engagement that we had was pretty significant with the Menlo Park EOC staff. I know we had myself and Chief Johnston and Andres all on that. The San Francisco Creek JPA was up and active, monitoring that, updates from the National Weather Service. San Mateo County DEM engaged with frequent calls. We internally here were having joint conversation with our law enforcement partners with the 3 agencies, EPA, Atherton, and Menlo Park. And then we also provided some drone support into the San Francisco Creek to help with some of the survey issues after the rain subsided. From that first day, we had a little bit of a break. And well, I will say this, oftentimes when the creek comes up and over and we have flooding issues, and we had quite a few flooding issues, water issues, trees down, power lines down, and our dispatch center went into what they call high volume dispatch protocols. So there was basically it's a process of prioritizing those calls which have an imminent threat to life first, and then property, and then some of the others. And so during the height of it, there was probably upwards of 50 to 60 calls that were unstaffed. Those were, for the most part, low risk calls where an emergency response wouldn't have a big change in the outcome. Some of those things are like, when you have trees down or power lines down, or even on some of the, I hate to say minor flooding because it's a pretty big deal in anyone's life when any portion of their home's being flooding. There's not a lot a fire engine can do on scene to prevent that. We can help move some furniture out of the water, but a lot of times that's our limitation. On January 4th, as the storms started coming back in again, your Menlo Park Fire Department stood up additional resources in anticipation of the increased demands. On that day, we staffed up, again, 2 boats with 4 water rescue staff, and then we staffed up Engine 504 with 2 additional members to help us with staffing. Beyond that, we also, and I should go back to December 31st and on January 4th both, but we called in some of our fire prevention staff to help us with less emergent calls so that they could stand by on a lines down call and monitor the situation there and free up our engine company resources to go on higher priority calls. Again, that was something that we did on January 4th, is using some of our safety staffing to go out as a single resource and be able to kind of monitor these situations and then free up our engine company resources. Then the resources were released the next morning. As we anticipated the storm on the 4th was going to be actually worse than the 31st. It turned out to not be so. as we know with weather, it's somewhat unpredictable. And the front slid a little bit south of us and impacted Monterey, San Jose, those areas much more significantly than us. And also the coast was especially hard hit. Again, we saw increased storm activity was predicted. So on Sunday, January 8th, we again stood up additional resources. This time, there was a request from OES to stand up our Swiftwater rescue team. And OES provides equipment for that to us. This is different than our FEMA task force. We also have our Swiftwater rescue team that is sponsored in part by Cal OES. So that was our staff, and we stood up 8 additional people. We anticipated that those 8 people would be able to help us with our increased call needs. And basically what we did is we pre-positioned that resource for our county only, for San Mateo County. And then we positioned it somewhat centrally there. What we found again fortunately for us, I love a good insurance policy that you never cash in on, which was what the case was on January 8th. We didn't need to utilize that resource. But the next morning, there was some pretty significant impacts on Monterey County, and OES requested that we move that resource down there and assist along the Salinas River. And so we deployed that 8-member Swiftwater rescue team down to Monterey County, where they remained until this morning. And they used them pretty frequently throughout. A lot of it was doing some minor rescues, some minor evacuations. A lot of it was, kind of going through and pre-planning out the areas that they had been assigned to should the rains increase. That response down there, just for your information, is one that was fully reimbursable through the governor's pre-positioning budget. So once we deployed, well, actually from the time we had it pre-positioned in our county to the time we got it back this morning, they were back in county by noon, fully reimbursed through OES. So that is kind of the state of, or kind of an update on what we did with our storm preparedness. There was obviously with the cities, a lot of efforts going on trying to provide sand and sandbags for their residents. But as we saw and heard on many of our conference calls, that just the demand was way greater than the supply. So that was a challenge, I think, for every local jurisdiction throughout our county and adjacent counties. A quick update on Station 4. I know every time I come back to you, it's a little bit later, so it's a little bit later this time. Part of this is due to rain and weather. Part of it is due to some of the requirements from the county, but we anticipate the engine companies moving in there on February 20th. It had been February 6th. I just got a report from John Hitchcock. We're optimistic about the 20th. That's when the engine and truck will move in there. Then we'll start working on finishing out the fire station with a demo of the house behind it and putting in the concrete and having a full drive through. And fingers crossed, we'll have a grand opening. I'm going to say June-ish. So as it gets closer, we'll start working on some big plans. Really looking forward to opening it up to the public and our neighbors in that area and letting them take a look at their neighborhood fire station. Some good things happening on the promotion front. Since our last meeting, I've had 2 really significant promotions. One was we had a super qualified internal candidate that was successful in the administrative services director recruitment. That's Francine Hunt is our new administrative services director. So super excited for us. She's wearing multiple hats now because she's in charge of a bunch of our divisions or units and still having to do a good amount of her work as our old HR manager. So we will recruit for her position and fill that hopefully with somebody highly qualified. Well, I know we'll fill it with somebody highly qualified, hopefully as good as Francine, though that's a pretty high bar. Another thing that happened over since our last meeting is with the promotion of Chief Coyle up to our new deputy chief, I had a vacancy for an operations chief and I promoted Aaron McDonald to that position. I will say and thank you to the board for the support of the pilot program related to the housing. That really ended up being a pretty significant element in helping some folks make a decision for saying yes to that position. Aaron's one of them. It will, as far as our pilot program goes, it will be Chief McDonald and Chief Coyle will be temporarily living in that Chilco house. And we will, like I promised, report back probably in 11 months on the success of that program. But already that was successful just from my point of view in getting a really talented, competent individual in the form of Chief McDonald to step up and move into a 40-hour work week. The other thing that we have going right now is we have an RFP currently out for an investment advisor. Elaine, our finance manager, put together the RFP and has posted it up on a variety of sites. So we're hoping we get a good response back to that. And we'll come back to the finance committee for more details on next steps relating to that and helping us interview some of those firms. A couple other things that I just wanted to share with you. Our website, number one, is going to be refreshed and up and running hopefully by the end of next week. So we're super excited to change the user interface, make it a little bit more friendly so everyone can actually take a good look at it on their phones, easier to find things. It won't be perfect yet, but it will be significantly improved over our current website. So end of next week is when we'll pop it up. We'll be looking for feedback. It's one of those things where we wanted it to be 100% perfect. It probably would take us too long to get it there. So it's a significant improvement. Please give us your feedback on the website and what we can do to even improve it further. So looking forward to that. And then just one other thing. I mentioned Andres during our storm preparation. He was invaluable, in interacting in so many things. Unfortunately, we're going to be losing Andres. This is his last week. He's got a emergency planning job with Santa Clara Water District down out of San Jose. So he'll still be in the neighborhood, still doing the same things. And he said he would still answer my phone calls. So we will, it leaves us a little bit short right now in our new Bureau of Community Engagement and Resilience, but we have our volunteer recruitment going right now. And we've got a great team that will pick up the slack behind Andres and his departure. So anyway, that is it for my fire chief's report, and I'm open for any comments or questions.
Any comments or questions from the directors? Gary?
Had to get off mute, sorry. Yeah, so I have two questions. One is on the website. Have you thought about doing kind of an internal launch of that to get comments in advance, or are you just going to launch it directly out to the public all at once?
I will. That's a great question. I think they've done some internal testing, but let me see if Francine is up and available. I know she was chatting with me about it earlier.
Hi.
Can you answer that?
Good evening, Director Bloom. So yeah, from my understanding with the our administrator that's conducting this kind of facelift of our current website is that it will go live next week. We have been looking already at the kind of at the Sandbox site and doing some testing. Doing some testing in that Sandbox site, but as the chief mentioned, the website will go live, and we will it'll transfer the data over that's on our current website into the new format, and then we will just be going through and updating the pages. But they're already testing to make sure links work in the Sandbox site, so it will go out to the public.
Okay, got it. And then my only other comment on the report was appreciate the storm report and the update on that. I'm just curious if there's any process envisioned around like an after action report or a review of lessons learned and what we might do differently in the next big storm, and what your thought process was around, kind of considering an evaluation of the district's response during that period of time.
So I don't know what our formal after action review process is, but yes, I know there is at the conversations have already been happening with all the EOCs and the DEM, and I know we'll do one internally also. But yeah, the formality of it, I'm not sure what our normal AAR process is, but for sure we'll do that.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't necessarily suggesting you need to do a formal process, just, making sure we're collecting the lessons learned. If we have feedback for other agencies, we're giving them the feedback. My experience with these kinds of events in the past was, some discussion afterwards solves a lot of problems for the next one. That's all I'm recommending.
I agree. Thank you, Director.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Chuck.
I have two questions for the chief. One, did we hire a consultant for the revisions to the website, or did we do that internally?
We hired a consultant.
Okay, good. And the second question, oh gosh, what was my second question? Oh, I know. You said the county pre-positioned the water rescue group, and I was curious where that happened. Where were they in the county?
Sure, they were, so, and let me just give some clarity on this. So OES asked us to pre-position or stand up the asset for countywide access to it. We placed it in the city of San Mateo, centrally located, for access north and south within the county.
So I'm curious, if we needed it in the city, I just wonder why does it get, do we have a choice about that, or can we say no? Can we
Yes.
leave it in our district?
We could say, yeah, we could say no, for sure. We could have gotten the funding for it and just held on to it, down in the southern portion of the district. But yeah, the intention behind it was for it to be a countywide asset being paid for by OES. So, when we had our Swiftwater team stood up on January 4th and December 31st, we housed those in the district. But yeah, with this, it was, like I said, the problem was a little bit wider spread. And we were looking at what our needs were district-wide and what we were anticipating. And we placed it there thinking that was the best place for the resource for everybody.
When it stayed in the district, it just stayed at home then, is that right?
Yeah, can you ask that question again? I didn't quite. understand.
When it stayed in the district early on, did it just stay by Station 77 there?
Sure, they were, I think they placed them over by Station 6 was where we had placed them, but they were here in the district. It was interesting. On December 31st, they did help with some evacuations in a mobile home park along Bayshore, which I think actually is either in the county area or even possibly in the Redwood City jurisdiction, but an area that Engine 77 normally responds to. So, but in general, they were here locally and responding to incidents in or near the district.
And so
on those two
our
days. And
decision to have them be near Station 6?
Sorry, what was that?
Was it our decision to have them
yes.
be near Station?
That was our operational decision.
And just out of curiosity, why Station 6?
Don't know why.
Would you guess that related to where the danger might be, or would that relate to where there was room to park everything?
My guess is if I was, and this is just speculation, a dry spot that's not going to flood, that's centrally located in our district to be able to respond east or west. That's just a guess.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Robert, I thought I saw your hand raised.
No, I'll withdraw my question. I think it's a follow-up to what Gary said. It could be discussed in another venue. activity as it relates to the response to the storm. Because, well, let me just throw it out there, Chief. It's just a throwing out there kind of idea. As it relates to, and we'll use this as a wording, as it relates to the storm and as it relates to community response, in terms of, down the road in the future, that looking at how that fits in or could integrate into the community response would be some good thoughts to be kind of talked about at some point down the road. And this can all happen through the emergency preparedness committee too.
I appreciate that, Director. And I think there's, especially as we get our volunteer coordinator in, I think there's gonna be a lot of opportunities just by watching around, some opportunities for our future volunteers, whether they're CERT trained or just volunteers that are able-bodied, where we can assign them to assist in sandbagging with some of our local cities. The city of San Francisco has a kind of novel program where they have community members adopt a drain or a couple of drains in their neighborhood. And I saw an older woman over there off of Euclid with a little rake, and she was doing that exact same thing where the community members get it. As soon as those drains plug up, it creates really significant impacts in a neighborhood. But there's, I think, going to be a lot of opportunities like that where we can engage our community volunteers to do things like that, or people that aren't even used to doing it. But, if we go into our neighborhoods where there's issues and have them do something similar to that, and they just pay attention to 2 or 3 drains and keeping them open, that could be a really great way for us to engage some volunteers.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I just made a notation of that to talk to our group over here. So, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for the chief? Okay, thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Director.
Can you just please express our thanks and gratitude to everyone who really worked on, just did an amazing job making sure that the entire district was safe and helping others when needed outside of the district as well.
I absolutely will. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item number 2, which is the presentation of changes to the Political Reform Act, the Levine Act. Steve Miller and Nicole, I think this is your presentation for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Director Chenkrally. I am just going to turn this over to my wonderful colleague, Nicole Witt, whom I believe you all know already. So Nicole, take it away.
Good evening, directors. In the agenda packet, we've included a staff report summarizing the recent changes to the pay-to-play provisions of the Political Reform Act, which are known informally as the Levine Act. Most importantly, the Levine Act now applies to directly elected boards such as the Fire District Board of Directors. The Levine Act prohibits board members from participating in certain decisions if they have received campaign contributions in excess of $250 from a party or a participant to the proceeding in the 12 months prior to the decision. If the board member has received a contribution in excess of $250, they must disclose it on the record and then recuse themselves from the decision. In addition, board members may not solicit or accept, and a party may not provide a contribution in excess of $250 while the proceeding is pending or for 12 months after the final decision. So practically speaking, this change means that Fire District board members will need to be aware of who their campaign donors are and whether those individuals or entities are seeking contracts with the district. The staff report explains the Levine Act in detail and summarizes the new disclosure forms that the district is requiring proposers to fill out in order to assist the board with complying with the Levine Act. It's also important to know that the California Fair Political Practices Commission, which is the entity responsible for enforcing the Political Reform Act, has determined that elected board members from local agencies will not need to recuse themselves from decisions made in 2023 if the contribution was received in 2022. So this change to include elected board members in the within the scope of the Levine Act does not have a sort of retroactive effect in terms of when the law became effective. I'm happy to respond to any questions, but I also wanted to mention that we're going to cover this topic in some detail at the AB 1234 training on Thursday.
Hey, any questions from directors? I don't see any hands up, but
So,
Chuck?
I don't have my hand up.
Oh, who?
that's me, Virginia.
Oh, sorry,
Sorry.
Robert. Sorry.
Nicole, in our board packet, I think you was reading it from the item that was placed in item number 2. And item under discussion had, which is number 1. Could you maybe go through that again? Because I thought I heard you say that this doesn't apply for anyone for 2022 in terms of this particular, or maybe I got it all wrong. Could you
No,
maybe explain to-
No, you definitely got it right. So that first bullet, item number 1 under the discussion, says that a board member may not participate in a decision if they've received a contribution in excess of $250 in the 12 months before the decision. So the problem that folks were encountering and concerned with was that the law became effective on January 1st, 2023. So what happens for campaign contributions that were received last year? And that's the piece where the FPPC, the Fair Political Practices Commission, just recently in late December, determined that if a board member, a local elected board member received a contribution in 2022, and then a decision comes before them in 2023 related to a contribution that they received, they would not need to recuse themselves under the Levine Act. So that piece of it, just in terms of when the statute became effective, that piece is not retroactive or backwards looking. But going forward, for future campaign contributions that are received in 2023 and onward, you will need to keep that sort of 12-month look back period in mind.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If you don't have any now, we do have this, this is going to be covered at our AB 1234, the ethics training on Thursday. Okay. Then thank you, Nicole.
All right, thank you.
And then we'll move on to item 3, which is the fee waiver ordinance. And this is asking us to adopt an ordinance which provides updates to the district's fee schedule, repeals ordinance 42-2017 and amends the district's fee waiver policy. And this item actually has a public hearing, but before we open it up for the public hearing, John Johnston, our wonderful fire marshal, this is your report. So do you want to kind of give us an update, and then I'll open up the public hearing?
Again, Happy New Year, and it's happy to definitely to see everybody here. And just wanted to give an update. I know that this was presented last month so that you could see the fee schedule updates after an extensive study. It is recommended that a new fee study is performed to do an analysis of billable hours, staff hours, any changes that occur with staffing and time, and with the code updates to also make sure that the fees are current with the California Fire Code. We performed that last 6 years ago. So this, we hired a contractor, which was Wolford Consulting, and we had a presentation that was given in regards to how those fees were obtained and determined. And a fee schedule is now presented to you that is following the board's policy to try to obtain 100% cost recovery as best as applicable. And I did go through the fees and stayed consistent with past board action of keeping the residential fire sprinklers free. Other than that, there was just a few that I wanted to make sure that stayed to me, what would they were applicable for a reasonable fee in the area that we're in, if they seemed excessive, et cetera, but also working well with the homeowners. So before you is a proposed fee schedule. And the public hearing will allow for the public to be able to make any comment if there are any. Other than that, we are recommending that you will adopt the ordinance and repeal the past ordinance. This will take effect, I believe, in 45 days after adoption per state law. And then the last item is the district's fee waiver policy, which staff is having one change, which is adding in a line that is from the California Fire Protection District Law of 1987, and just putting that in so that staff is able to waive the fees for any projects that are governmental and would comply with that law.
Okay, thank you, John. Any questions or comments from our directors before I open up the public hearing? Chuck?
We can't
You're
hear you.
muted, Chuck.
You're on mute, Chuck.
I'm sorry. John, I wanted to ask you about the last thing you just mentioned, the fee waiver for government agencies. In the past, we kind of worked out mutual agreements with government agencies such that they wouldn't charge us fees and we wouldn't charge them fees. It sounds like this kind of precludes us from doing that in the future. Is that right?
I don't think I can comment on that. You can have whatever discussions you want with the other government entities. I'm just stating what's in state law for us.
But there's no more quid pro quo. In other words, we can't say we'll waive the fire things for, let's say, the city of Atherton, if Atherton waives, building construct permits for us or something like that. We have to waive them for the city of Atherton, the town of Atherton, regardless.
That is the way the state law reads.
Okay. And the state law was only related to fire agencies. There was nothing that affected what they could do to us.
Well, this is the fire district law. I do not know about the other reciprocal laws, if that would take place, vice versa. So I would have to refer to Steve Miller if he knows if there's anything else that would prohibit towns or cities from charging us.
I'm not aware of anything.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Robert?
Yes, Chief Johnson. On page 8 of the report, on page 9, right above the pie chart, in terms of subsidy allocation, it is, I guess if I'm reading this correctly, it says in the last sentence, the remaining 1/3 of the subsidies is attributed to proposed fee reduction in plan review and inspection services, as well as the proposal to not charge a fee for public education and cert classes and event. How does that work? I mean, is it so part of the fees go towards providing these kind of services? Is that what it's?
No, so the subsidy is mainly so for plan review and inspection. The subsidy would be, for example, the residential sprinklers fee being waived. So that is a huge part of that subsidy that the fire board has elected to provide. And there's also, I believe, a couple other fees that are slightly reduced just to stay within the market range. And then also, we do not charge for our engine company inspections, just because we do rotate that through prevention and with the engine companies, and we believe that they are already providing that service, and it's a means for great community benefit. So we do not charge for that. So that is another subsidy. And then when it comes to public education, we are not going to charge the public to do a station tour or for an engine or for our public education specialist to go visit a school, provide any of the training that we do within the schools or senior programs. And then I believe also then with our cert classes or events that come about, we do not charge for those because we see it as a public service and a public benefit for us to be participating and educating at those events.
So is that my understanding that, so the reduction of the fees help offset those costs for, I mean, is there an offset in terms of costs? Is that how it's looked at for the CERT class in the public education?
For public education, again, it's a matter of if we're going to go visit a school, our whole goal, our mission statement is to, reduce any injury and harm to the environment. And so a school is already limited on budget. So we're not to charge a school to have an engine come and present a fire education class to a school is not to their benefit or ours. So it's just natural, makes sense. The way the fee schedule study is performed is so that we know the cost of any activities that we do. And it needs to be realized that there is a cost to that even when we go.
The reason I'm bringing it up is I think it's a great way to put a backspin on this back to the cities and the council members to kind of let them know what else the district is doing. And maybe I should be saying this, but I think it's a way to let them know that we are providing certain services that, free of charge, so to speak, and for the good of the community as well as the people in the community. And I don't know how to make that spin on it. I think we need to figure out how to think about it, try to figure out what we can do to make that happen. But I don't think they know. I don't think they get the connection there.
I can work with the chief on finding a way to do that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Gary?
Yeah, so my question is just kind of a follow-up to Robert's. I think what you were saying there with the CERT classes and sprinklers is that is why you're not getting 100% cost recovery. So you're essentially carving out 20 to 30% and saying that's, we're not going to recover all the money. And it looks like the total, to Robert's point, is about $500,000 that you're foregoing for the service to the community. Is that a correct interpretation of your numbers there?
I would have to look at the numbers again when it comes to, so between 3.147 million to 2.6.
Yeah,
that is correct. And
Okay.
one of the reasons why we need to do that is we are not allowed to make money.
yeah.
And so that is a large factor why I like to stay in that 70 to 80% cost recovery zone.
Yeah, but in a way, it's a cushion to avoid making money, but it's the money you're allocating for community service purposes.
Service, right.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make
We're
sure
living
that
based on
after Robert
tax.
asked his question, and I was like, okay, maybe I misunderstood, but okay, got it. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Rob Solano? Do you have any comments?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no comments from directors, then I'm going to open up the public hearing portion of this agenda item. So if there are any members of the public who would like to make a comment about our updates to the fire district's fee schedule, please raise your hand or press, is it *9, Michelle? Michelle, do you see any hands raised, or? I don't see any either. Okay, then I'm going to close public comment. And if someone would like to make a motion to adopt this ordinance, now is the time to do so. And it's to adopt an ordinance which provides updates to the district's fee schedule, repeals ordinance 42-2017, and amends the fire district's fee waiver policy. Is there a motion to approve that?
I make a motion we approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any last comments from directors? Okay, Michelle, if you're there, can you please do a roll call, please?
I can't hear her.
Michelle?
We can't.
I don't know if Michelle, can you hear us? Chief, do you want to just do the roll call so we can go to the next item?
Sure.
Okay,
somebody's on mute.
yeah, I don't know what's
Just-
going on, but
I'm gonna go
anyway,
down to on my screen. Yeah, Director Bloom,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Bernstein.
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Solano, aye. Director Corrali,
aye, so that motion carries unanimously, so thank you.
sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. So the next item is item 5, which is the consent calendar. So I'm gonna ask if anyone would like to pull items off the consent.
Mr. Chair, I would like to maybe pull it off the financial report. I don't know which one that is. Item
Agenda item number 6.
Item number
Yes.
6. Oh, is that Michelle?
I'm back. Yeah, something was off with my microphone.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you,
Okay,
Chief, for filling in for me. Good job.
thank you. Yeah, so we'll pull off item 6. Any other one? Okay, so is there a motion? Well, so is there a motion to approve the consent calendar with one amendment to the minutes of the regular meeting? And that, well, wait, Gary, I think you weren't gonna vote on one of the items, right? Because you weren't at the meeting.
That's correct. Yeah. It
So
was
why don't we pull off item 5 to for the special board meeting? We'll divide the question of number 5.
right.
Okay, so the December 20th, 2022 minutes, Michelle sent us the minor clarifications as to the vote count for the board officers. So the motion to approve the consent calendar with the regular meeting minutes for December 20th will be the amended minutes that Michelle sent to us. If you haven't taken a look at it already, then I'm just letting you know that it's just clarification for the vote count for board officers. So is there a motion to approve the consent calendar for items for the for the regular meeting for December 2022 and item 7, which is the continued remote meetings in accordance with Assembly Bill 361.
I so moved.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please, Michelle.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
Aye.
Oh my God, how can you stand it?
I can, what we say, Michelle? I can hear you.
She's doing a roll call. Michelle, who did you just call? Director Jones?
That's a playground of your day, huh?
There's something weird going on with her mic.
No, there's some
All
other
right, well, I
noise.
love you guys.
There's another noise in somebody's mic.
Hey, Sam?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chief, I think you might have to do, can I do the roll call, Steve, or does the chief have to do it? Or can I just do it?
You're welcome to do it.
Virginia, I'm
But I
back.
think
Let me
people
just,
should turn their, put mute on if they're not speaking.
yeah.
Right.
Anybody,
Okay. Then why don't you finish the roll call, please, Michelle?
Director Jones?
Aye,
Thank you. Director Solano?
you mute,
Director
Rob.
Solano?
Aye.
Thank you, Director Crowley.
Aye, so that motion carries. So then getting back to one other board meeting minutes for the special board meeting of December 19th, 2022, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I so moved.
Is there a second? I'll
I'll
second. Oh, Chuck, you want to second it?
Sure.
Okay, roll call, please.
Director Bernstein?
Aye.
Director Bloom?
That's the one I'm going to abstain from because I wasn't there.
Thank you. Director Jones?
Aye,
Director Solano?
Aye.
And Director Crowley.
Aye, so there are 4 ayes. and 1 abstention, so that motion carries. So why don't we go to item 6, which is the treasurer's report. Robert, you pulled that off the calendar, the consent calendar. Is there a
Yes.
reason, or did you just want to hear the report from Elaine?
We can do either one, but I have specific, 2 specific questions I want to
Okay, then why
explore.
don't you ask them then?
Elaine, starting at page 35. Actually, I started at page 34, I'm sorry. Just wanted to get just a clarity on looking at the under the operating cash, and we got it looks like the California State Treasurer's Office, and it mentioned that the designation is that LAIF. And it's, in looking at your notes, it seems as if the is where a certain part of money is there, and it's assuming it's a pool of funds that we, with other entities like ourselves, leave our money into that particular fund. And is it my understanding that we there's about a 2.07% interest rate that's being gained on that particular money
Yes, that's correct. And that's the average for the month of November.
for the month of November? Okay, so that's just for the month of November, and it will vary based upon where the interest rates are at that time. And it talked about, so are you the person that kind of looks at that particular funds? And I assume that whatever the state invests in, and it either go up or go down. Is there a notification that you get on a monthly or quarterly basis from them to kind of let you know where things are?
Yes, that's correct, Director Jones. So basically every month we receive a statement from the state office, like noting what our current balance is and what our market value is, as long as the amortized cost. So that's where we would actually see, how we're doing, or how the state is doing with regards to the pool of investments. But other than that, all of the information like the yield rates, like the interest rates for the month, that's easily available on their website. So we also on a monthly basis take a look at that just to see, what are the current interest rates, what would be, our gains for the next quarter or for the rest of the year. So to answer your question, yes, we do receive, some sort of statements from the state office.
Forgive me for my slowness and lack of understanding of all this, but thank you for that information. But it also noted that there is a interest rate risk involved into deposit of those funds into that particular account. And my assumption is that any investment, there's always a risk that's involved. And so I assume that that is being monitored very close by this entity and yourself. As is there a certain risk? How should I say it? Is there a point where if things go south, what kind of triggers mechanism may be in place to kind of forewarn you that things are going below a certain tolerance level? In terms of for the investment that is may go beyond our a level where we may consider, hey, maybe it's may not necessarily be the best investment for us.
I would answer that in a way we're in, because right now, Director Jones, we only have this LAIF account as our sole investment. So technically, all of our excess cash are invested in the LAIF account. And as far as the interest rate, you are correct in saying that in every investment there is actually a risk, no matter how little the risk is. So technically, for the LAIF investment account, there's very, very minimal risk on on our side, because it's in accordance to our investment policy, wherein we would only invest into certain funds wherein we would have the safety of our principal, liquidity, And another one that's I forgot what that is, but technically with our investment in the LAIF account, there's minimal to zero risk, because we would still retain our account balance, whatever that amount would be. So we would also still gain interest on top of that. And in terms of just triggers on what would trigger us to, let's say, this is not the right investment for us or things like that. In our case, it's not necessarily applicable in essence, because again, this is only our sole investment. So we don't have any other choice as of the moment. That's why we are actually looking into other ways wherein we can actually find other investment options for us. Thus, the RFP that we just recently released for an investment advisor.
So the second question, thank you very much. So the second question is on page 35. It relates to 35 and 36. I'm looking at down at the total unassigned dollar amount that's there. And the question is, how long does that, I assume that it's not assigned anywhere, it's just in an unassigned, it's in that particular category. And is that particular source of funds, are they in a particular bank, being held at a certain bank? Whether it's checking or saving or whatever. And also it appears to me that when does those funds get assigned somewhere? Because I've been seeing this every month, and sometimes the number increase. So where do we have any proposed plan or policy in terms of right now?
Yes, that's correct, Director Jones. So for the first question, whether it's included in a certain bank account, so the way to look at it is these reserves are like excess cash and additional reserves that we have right now. So you would actually take a look at the total balance, and right now it's all under our LAIF account and all our other operating cash accounts. And then for the second question, and the reason why it's negative right now for the unassigned fund balance, it's because of the staggered receipts and expenditures, because we only receive our property taxes and all our revenues not on a monthly basis, but sometimes we receive it especially the property taxes, right, which is a bulk of our revenues. We only receive it like twice a year, mostly for the secured and unsecured funds in December, and then another one in late fiscal year like April, May. So that's the reason why you see as of November it's just like a negative $15 balance. But for the month of December next month, since we already receive 50% of our property taxes, then you would already see that it's going to be positive. For your second question, with regards to when will it be assigned? So it will be assigned in accordance to our fund balance policy. So at the end of the year, once we figure out what our total savings would be or what would be the surplus, which is the excess of revenues over expenditures for the fiscal year, then we would determine on what type of fund or reserve we would allocate that specific balance. Let's say at the end of the year it's, let's say, 10 million. Then we would follow the fund balance policy that was just recently approved last September 2022, I believe, to determine on which accounts or which reserves do we actually allocate that $10 million surplus, whether it's for capital reserve, whether it's for a CIP, whether it's for a workers' comp liability reserve. That all leads up to the fund balance policy, which was approved by the board. So we would be able to determine that at year end, and technically it's gonna be at around October, November of this year, where we'd be able to to definitely kind of like decide on where to put that money.
So the anticipation is that I assume it's the estimate of the 15 million is a kind of an estimate.
The 50 million is as of November.
Okay.
But our estimates of our surplus is actually, you can see it on let me see, on page 30 32. Actually, I know not 32, but page 31. So on page 31, that 15, you would see that the 7.3 million balance on, this is on column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, on the 5th column at the
Mhm.
bottom. So
Mhm.
that's the estimated, surplus at the end of the year based on the current information that we have.
Okay. All right. Got you. Thank you.
Gary? You're on mute, Gary.
Sorry, gotta get off mute first. My question's related to the roughly 59 million you have allocated to the LAAF fund. And then you have the RFP out for the investment manager. Do you anticipate 100% of that money being managed by the investment manager, or do you have some other formula in mind?
No, so technically we would have these two types of investments on our account. One is the liquidity reserve, and one is the investment reserve, or the capital account reserve, wherein the investment advisor would basically handle that. So once we actually decide on which investment company to hire, then they would actually do the analysis on what type of what is the optimal mix between the liquidity account, which is currently our LAIF account, versus the reserve portfolio, which is that's going to be handled by them. So it's not going to be 100% handled by them technically. So there's going to be some sort of a mix between the LAIF account and then the investment account that we would set up with the investment firm. And that all depends on, again, their analysis and then cash flows and all of those stuff.
Okay. And I have a whole host of other questions on LAAF, but I'll defer those to a committee meeting or to a later time. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other directors have any questions? Chuck or Rob? Chuck? You're on mute, Chuck.
No, I don't have any questions.
Rob?
No, thank you.
Okay, so I don't know if we want to we can take public comment on this if there's any members of the public who would like to comment on the treasurer's report. This is your time to do so now. Michelle, I don't know if you see any hands raised. I don't, but I might be missing.
I see no raised hands.
Okay, then is there a motion to accept the treasurer's report for the month ended November 30th, 2022?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so Director Solano made the motion and Director Jones seconded it. A roll call, please, Michelle.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Bloom,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Crawley.
Aye. So that motion carries unanimously, and now we're going to the regular agenda items, starting with item 8, which is to approve a resolution for the designation of signatory authority for the local agency investment fund. And I think that's Elaine and the chief. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
It's all Elaine. It's over to
Yeah.
you, Elaine.
Let me do
Okay.
that. Thank you, Director
Thank you.
Caroli.
Thank you.
So the staff report is really just to update the designated signatories for the district's LAIF account due to changes in management personnel. So this will actually allow the staff listed to authorize and initiate transactions such as deposit and withdrawal of monies to our LAIF investment account. So the new resolution that is also attached in the packet proposes for the following staff to have signing authority over the LAIF account. So it will be Fire Chief Lorenzen, Deputy Chief, Fire Chief Coyle, and myself as the finance manager. I'm open to any questions about that. So it's really just to update again who has the authority to sign or to issue or authorize transactions within their LAIF account.
Okay, thank you. Chuck, I see that you've got your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I have two questions or questions. In the past, when we've done this, there were two features of this that seemed to be missing from this. And one feature was that it specified that the movement of funds could only go between district funds to LAIF or LAIF to other district funds. that would prevent somebody from putting a deposit, for example, in their own account or something of that sort. Did you use as a model some of these old signature authorities that we?
The last time that we did this, Director Bernstein, is on February of last year, I believe. And it actually has the same language as well. So I'm not sure if, historically we've done that in the past, but, from in the latest one that we just, did, it's pretty much the same language.
I see. Well, I think it would be a good idea. I mean, just to allow someone to withdraw money from the fund, I think is insufficient. I think we have to say they can withdraw it and it needs to go back and forth within the district's own funds.
Okay. I think just a little bit of a background. So when there's only one bank account that's assigned or that's linked to our LAIF account. So whenever we actually have deposits or withdrawals, whenever we have the withdrawals, it automatically goes to our bank account, the district's bank account. So if I get the risk, but right now there's really one bank account linked to our LAIF account. So even if someone actually authorizes like a withdrawal of 5 million, that person wouldn't be able to actually deposit it in personal account, because again, it's only linked to the district's bank account, unless we actually have change it to have other bank accounts linked again to the LAIF account. But I understand the point, and I think again that would be a good maybe change to the resolution if ever.
Yeah, because anybody with
Director Bernstein,
Yes.
this is Steve. Just, I don't know why I know this, but I happen to know this, that LAIF requires 2 signatures before it will release any funds whatsoever. So if that provides you some additional comfort that your chief is not going to withdraw all $59 million and pass it along to your general counsel.
Well, thank you.
No, but his immediate report could be the second signature too.
But that actually was the second point that I was going to make, was that in the past, we've sometimes had more than one signature required, and there have also been sometimes limits depending on the role or something of that sort. But I just feel this is a little bit, I think this needs to be a little tighter than it is. The 2 signatures certainly helps, but again, if somebody has signature authority, then they could actually set up another account to link to the LAIF account. I mean, they would have that authority to do that. So even though there's only one account now, anybody with signature account authority could change that. I think it needs to, and please, I don't have any thought that anybody's going to come in here and steal $10 million, but I just think that we ought to have the right language to preclude that from any thought of that.
Gary?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I tend to agree with Director Bernstein on this one. This is, very basic financial controls that in a corporate environment would always be there. I think in a public environment, they should be there as well. So I'd recommend that the resolution highlight the 2 signatures required, and only for the movement. These signatures are only for the movement of funds between district accounts. I think that's a reasonable request, just straight from financial control perspective.
Chuck, are you done? You still have your hand up. I didn't know if you'd like to make any more comments. Please do.
No, I just left it up. I apologize, but I think Gary's comment is a good one, and I think we could go to our auditor and ask for some standard language from them.
Robert, I thought that you had your hand up. I don't mean to skip over you. So if you don't, that's fine. If you do, let us know. Okay. So let me just say this, Elaine and Chief, I think I have the same concerns as Directors Bernstein and Bloom. I just want to make sure that we have more controls and checks and balances in place. And, maybe if there is something that just says that, it can go into one account, that's fine. But
Yeah, Director Kilar, that's all point well taken from all the directors. So what I think what I can suggest, Chief Lorenzen, maybe you have another idea, but what I would suggest is, we can actually put that language and in the resolution and then bring it back again, to the board for for approval.
Does that work for y'all, Gary and Chuck? That,
Yeah.
I mean, that works for me. We can approve it next
Yeah,
week.
it works for me, or we can amend the resolution as shown. But either way is fine with me, whichever the team prefers.
What's easiest for you, Elaine?
Actually, I defer that to Michelle with regards to, the amendment for the resolution. I'm not sure, I mean, if we can actually approve it now and then amend it, in the next board meeting, I think that would be preferred. So at least, for the time being, the persons designated as signatories is already updated. But in terms of, the actual language and then the actual authority, I guess, transferring the funds just between, the LAIF and then the district's fund account, and then the additional language for, the two signatures, that would probably, follow in the next month. But, either way, I think we're fine, because right now we still have, I think in the current resolution, or, the current resolution that's not yet replaced, we still have Chief Lorenzen and I think Long as one of the signatories. So if we ever need to do some withdrawals or deposits, we can still do it. So whatever the board decides, it will be fine for us.
Yeah, I was
Well, then-
actually suggesting something slightly different, which is amend the resolution and approve the resolution all at once right now.
Right,
The amendment is relatively simple. You're simply amending the resolution as stated that says it'll require 2 signatures, and it'll only be a resolution authorizing movement of funds between district accounts and LAIF. That's the resolution. That to
it'd
me
be
is
just the
wording of
additional
re-
language,
the
right?
additional language.
To move, to have, any fund movements between 2 fire district accounts. But
Correct.
the signatories would still be the same.
Signatories are the same with those 2 restrictions added.
I mean, I'm fine with that amendment. Michelle, does that work? I mean, I think that would work for you in terms of timing too, right?
I think that will work. We can do
Okay.
that.
Okay, so Gary, do you want to make a motion to approve that with the additional language?
Sure. So I'll move that we approve the resolution of the change of signatures with the modification to the resolution that states that it'll require 2 signatures and it'll only be for the movement of funds between district accounts.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion among the board, the directors? Okay, any public comment? I don't see any public comments or hands raised. Okay, I'll close discussion and let's do a roll call, please.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Bloom,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Sana,
Aye.
Director Crawley.
Aye, so that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Gary, for making that motion. Okay, moving on to item 9, which is to approve a resolution authorizing the surplus of 7 fire engines and 1 aerial ladder truck. So Chief Lorenzen, is that you and Chief
This
Babcock
is-
who's going to be
it's
doing the
ju-
report? Chief
Yeah, just
Babcock?
me, just me.
Okay,
Yeah,
Okay.
this is, so really what we're requesting today is approval from the board in one fell swoop to surplus all of the engines that are designated in the board report and are becoming surplus as a result of the board's prior approval to purchase 6 new engines and a ladder truck. Staff report really lines out the reasons for it, and obviously we're very appreciative of the board's support in purchasing the new engines and hopefully the approval to access the surplus equipment. During the process of evaluation, we also identified 1 additional engine to surplus is why there's 1 more piece of equipment that we're asking to surplus than we're actually replacing. So with that, I will open it up to questions.
directors? Any questions or comments? Robert?
Chief, could you maybe, yeah, describe how the surplus equipment will be disposed of, is what type of, notification go out to other places, some of like the smaller, firehouses, stations that are locally in other places?
Sure, we are going to advertise the engines on the open market. One will be through, I'm forgetting the name of the link. Yeah, I'm blanking on it, but it's how we normally surplus equipment, by posting it out there. And then we're also looking at the potential with a vendor that sells, basically surplus engines. So they'll be broadly advertised. Our intent being that we get as close to fair market value as possible. So I don't know if that answers your question, Director, but there won't be outreach to individual departments and agencies. But I will say the time is opportune right now for us to be, it's definitely a seller's market. With all of the supply chain issues currently, if you want to order and purchase a new fire engine, the turnaround time is almost 2 years now. So there may be a number of agencies out there looking for an engine in reasonably good condition to kind of fill their gap until they get one. So we'll advertise it pretty broadly so that the district can recoup as much of our costs as possible.
Thank you.
If I remember the name of that website during the course of this, I'll let you know, but I'm just blanking on it right now.
Thanks.
Thank
Chuck?
you.
I have two questions, Chief, and a comment. My first question is the aerial ladder truck, is that the Quint?
No, it's, well, stand by. Let me see.
Because it's a Pierce Dash Aerial.
Aero XT.
Don't know for when you say, is it the current Quint? It's not our newest Quint. I know we purchased another newer Quint. We're keeping that one.
Okay.
So we had two aerial ladder trucks. I think they were both Quints. So the one that you currently see as truck one, we're keeping. We're going to put that into reserve status.
I thought we had only one Quint actually, but okay. It was
Oh.
one that we had lots of issues with in the electrical harness and things like that. And I just wondered if this was the one.
I've got lots of staff texting me since I don't know. They're like, well, we only have one Quint. The old one that we're getting is old truck one, which was a tiller and an old aerial. So we're getting rid of that one.
Okay, I'm not sure it was a tiller either, by the way, but it's T1 was the old one that was very reliable and went on all those things down south. Let me ask on page 45 of the staff report, right underneath the chart, it says all apparatus will be sold with limited hand tools that have also been deemed non-serviceable. That doesn't mean that the apparatus comes with hand tools, right? It means you're also selling hand tools in addition to apparatus?
And what it does mean is there's going to be on the apparatus, there will be a limited inventory of hand tools that will go with it. And these are the things that typically when we order new engines, we are replacing a good amount of the hand tools, ones that are excess and ones that we're choosing not to keep will be included with the engines.
Oh, it does mean, oh, I see.
It does.
Okay, I just wanted to,
Sure.
and then I have only my comment on the relates to the resolution. Let me go back to page 44. It's the discussion paragraph at the bottom of the page. And I agree with it, the point. It says, while the 2015 Pierce Aero XT does not meet the general criteria for replacement, there is not an operational need to retain this apparatus, nor would it be fiscally prudent to keep, maintain, and store more equipment than is operationally necessary. That's an important point for this particular piece of equipment. And I think probably the one that has the most value of all these pieces here. So
You're
I
right.
would, since we're voting on something that doesn't quite meet the criteria we have, I'd like to modify the resolution, which is page 46. The third whereas of the resolution, where it says, the aerial ladder truck that no longer meet the district's needs based on their age, mileage, condition, and operational need. So that we've actually incorporated that important paragraph there.
Makes
Okay.
sense.
That makes sense. What did the other directors think on that? I think about that. I mean, that would match that last sentence too. I noticed that as well, Chuck, but I thought that maybe conditions would be broad enough to include that, but maybe not.
It's a good clarification from my lens.
Rob, any thoughts?
That's fine. That's fine.
Okay. So Michelle, can we add the operational needs language to that third whereas on the final resolution?
Yes, we'll do.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Chuck.
Welcome.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I do, Rob.
Yeah, I know, Rob, I mean, for Chuck, sorry, Rob.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Rob?
No, Chief, is there like a generalized form that we use when we surplus these types of vehicles with such a high value?
You were asking if there's a general form?
Is there a form that the district uses, like, gives them mileage and the condition and if there's any like damage to the vehicle, and then whatever the estimated cost is for the said vehicle?
That I don't know the answer to that, Director. I will get back to you with an answer on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I just have one more, Virginia.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you if you wanted to make that as part of the process moving forward, because it's an interesting, thing that we keep a record of those types of, just the description of, why we're getting rid of them or, making them surplus.
Well, there's a lot of, and I don't want to get into the weeds of the
Yeah,
operational aspect for the chief, but instead of a list the way we have here, it'd be nice to have some type of an inventory form done that totally identifies the unit, maybe some photographs. And Chuck brought up a good point about the equipment aspect. What is the average cost, Chief, to equip a engine truck like that new?
I am going to ask if Michelle can promote Kenny Babcock, who's on the call.
Oh, great.
And we'll see if, I don't want to put him on the spot, but Kenny's been secretly texting me some of the answers to this. So I think it's probably better that we go directly to the source.
Oh, sure. Have him come on.
And Kenny, you can unmute yourself at any time.
Good evening, directors, and Chief Lorenzen, thank you for letting me talk. So, Director Solano, so to start, we do advertise them on a auction site per our purchasing policy. They come out and take pictures of the inside and outside of the apparatus, and we list them there for auction. I'm not sure the other part of your question. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, about 90% of it. Okay, Chief. The other part would be for advertising on a like a generalized. Do we have an agent that that we use for that, Chief?
It's a representative from,
Chief?
it's a representative from Gov Deals, and they send one of the representatives out here
Okay,
who, who's familiar with the apparatus and taking pictures of them.
okay, great. That's all I have. Thank you, Chiefs.
Thanks.
Thank you, Director.
So I have just a quick question, Mark, or Chief. It says that the proceeds would go to the district's general fund. I mean, so, and I understand that we've done some of that before, but if we're gonna, I mean, do you think this could be allocated to something that would help go to create like a savings plan for new apparatus instead of going into
Sure.
the general fund?
Yeah. It's interesting because I asked Elaine that same question about where we should direct it, and his guidance was initially, let's direct it into the general fund. At the end of the year, we can, as the board, basically allocates our savings from the year or our surplus, we can allocate it back into the equipment replacement fund, or if we want to put it to something else, we can do that. But initially, its initial resting spot will go to the general fund, and then the board will be able to redesignate it into the appropriate funds at year end.
Well, so, I mean, do we have to wait till year end, or can we just do that after we receive the funds?
Sure. You could, I would imagine, do it. I mean, if that's the board's direction, we could put it in that. We have an apparatus replacement fund, I believe. So.
I mean,
could-
I don't know, we don't have to discuss that today, but if we wanted to, we could. I mean, I don't know if any other board members had thoughts on, where these funds should be placed. And we can save that discussion for another day once the funds are even received. So Gary, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't see that it needs to be part of the resolution.
No.
Before the funds start coming in, we should decide on the designation where we want it to go. I have a slight preference for if it's going to go, if its ending landing place is an equipment fund for future equipment, then put it there and don't ever have it park in the general fund.
Right, that's why I asked the question. I mean,
Yeah,
I
so
would,
that'd be my preference, but it sounds like we don't need to address that tonight relative to the resolution.
well, I mean, we could, that's the whole point, right? We could just address it tonight and direct that those funds go into, apparatus and equipment.
Yeah, the only reason I'm saying that is because it's not in the resolution, or at least I'm not seeing it.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I know. I mean, we can include that or just give direction.
Well, the question is, does it need to be resolution, or can that just be policy as determined, with the finance committee and the board?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's hear Robert, you had your hand up.
It follows the same line. I think we don't have to kind of get into debate on it tonight, but I think it just need to be placed on an agenda, someone's agenda, whether it's a next board meeting agenda or down the road or next month or starting off at the finance committee or HR develop the policy around it. Just kick it off over there.
Thanks, Chuck.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I would recommend this go on the finance committee agenda. The replacement fund, as I understand, is really a depreciation fund where we take the purchase price and we divide it by whatever the 10 years or 15 years that we expect the thing to last, and that's what goes in there. So I would defer to and from Gary's point, as I understand, Gary, for whatever reason, it's very old fashioned, but all money goes through the general fund for a reason that I still don't understand, but that's everything goes through there, and that's how their accounting is done. So
I'm too new to have historical perspective. I can just state what seems logical to me.
right.
Well, why don't we wait until the proceeds come in and just have that go through the finance committee and have them, figure that out, and then we'll vote on it after that. I mean, I don't even remember if it's in here. When do we expect the funds to even come in?
Oh, they will trickle in probably over the course of the next 8 to 10 months.
Yeah, but within the year.
Should be.
Okay. Great, so then, is there a motion to approve
So moved.
authorizing the surplus of the 7 fire engines and 1 aerial ladder truck? And Chuck, you've
Yeah.
moved,
I'll
Any-
second.
okay? Any public comment for this item? I don't see any hands raised, so roll call, please, Michelle.
Yes, just to confirm, was that Director Blooms? Did you second the item?
I did.
Thank you. Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Bloom,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Solano,
I,
Director Crawley.
Aye. So that motion carries unanimously. Thank you, thank you. Item 10,
Director Crawley, can I just check with Michelle and make sure, Michelle, you got the?
I will fix the
amend
resolution to
to
add the
the-
link. Yes.
Okay, you got it.
Yeah,
Thank
got
you.
it. Thank you.
thank you. So item 10 is to adopt a resolution approving the revised salary steps and associated job description for the fire prevention coordinator classification. So that is Francine.
Yes.
Yes, good evening, President Crawley and Board of Directors. So the resolution that I'm bringing before the board today is to approve the salary steps for the fire prevention coordinator. The district has one budgeted full-time fire prevention coordinator position that's in the fire prevention division and reports directly to the fire marshal. The incumbent in this classification has been employed with the district for just about 5.5 years. And during that tenure, this position has evolved due to increased demand in the prevention division for plans review. This incumbent of the fire prevention coordinator has been working in assuming higher level responsibilities and has been working as an out of class assignment under their contractual MOU. And then a little bit about this classification. It is a journey level classification. The primary responsibilities, although there is some technical work, are also some administrative responsibilities. It's a forward-facing position in the fire prevention office and helps customers at the counter, accepts fees, does some recording, but also has been assuming some plan review duties. There has been an uptick due to COVID-19 home remodels for home offices, housing demand, as well as solar initiatives. And this increased demand has created a higher workload for our one plan reviewer. And so this position has been assisting with those duties. The reason being is that some of the duties are not as technical, and it can leave the more technical plan reviews to that classification, as well as some require turnaround in a very short time, either 24 or 48 hours by law. So the fire prevention coordinator position has been utilized to review these less complex plans as discussed and help with the workload for the fire plans examiner. So we have reviewed the two classifications and the work that the fire prevention coordinator has been performing, and we are asking that the board adjust the pay steps for the classification to incorporate these higher level technical duties. The steps proposed would be a 10% increase from the current steps. And how this relates to the more technical position is there is approximately a 15% separation from this increased proposed steps to the fire plans review position or the plans examiner position. There's no additional impact to the approved 2022-2023 budget for these changes. And I am open to any questions about the request.
Directors, any questions? Chuck?
I'm sorry, I don't have questions. I have comments.
Yeah.
Comments too, sorry. Questions or comments or comments?
I have two general comments. One is, this is the first time we've seen this. I think it's very bad policy for us to be making structural changes in compensation at a board meeting. I think this is something that should be discussed at the HR committee so that it's fully understood. I think we had a very comprehensive, although I'm not totally confident in its results, but a comprehensive review of our classifications by a consultant. Recommendations were made, and we've been making decisions in increasing compensation based on those recommendations. And there was no recommendation made about this position. And by doing this, what we're essentially doing is upgrading a position where if this person were to leave and a new person were to come here, we might need those basic things like answering the phone or saying hello to people that came in the door. But the person might have the skill to approve the plans, yet that's what the position says. I just think there's a lot going on here, and I just don't think this is the right forum for doing it. So I recommend this be referred to the HR committee to discuss and understand and to figure out why the consultant, the comp and benefit, no, not comp and class consultant didn't recommend upgrading this position when that study was done, which was only what, 6 months ago or 4 months ago or something.
Any other thoughts? It's not a bad idea to kick it back to a committee to study it.
I just, one comment to partially address Director Bernstein's things. And we can certainly take it back to committee, but this is, wasn't a part of the comp and class study. What it is just recognizing our internal practices and what this position is now responsible for. Is we don't anticipate it changing. We anticipate the work and the level of work to remain this way. And we've been paying this individual to work out of classification for an extended period of time. So what we're really trying to do is adjust the job description and the pay range to reflect the work that's being done. And I agree, it was not addressed in the compensation study, but it's a different issue. But we can certainly refer to HR committee if that's the board's desire.
Chief, I think there's some other potential solutions like calling it, I'm making this up, calling it fire prevention senior fire prevention coordinator or some such thing, such that we don't lose this. And this isn't the place to decide how to do it. I just think it requires a smaller, a committee session where there's an hour to discuss 2 or 3 items.
Gary?
Yeah, so I guess I disagree with the direction this is going. I think I see this as extremely well laid out in the staff report and a relatively minor kind of operational shift to a position. I'd recommend the board go ahead and approve it.
Robert?
I kind of concur with Gary. I think the chief has been and Francine has and whoever has spent a considerable amount of time thinking through their needs of the fire state of the fire district and the positions. And I think that he wouldn't bring us anything that has been thought about yesterday. So I think we just need to trust his judgment on this and move forward. And I'm prepared to vote on it tonight.
Okay, any other comments? Gary, you still have your hand raised. I don't know
Oh,
if
I'm
you
sorry.
want.
Nope, I'm
Rob?
done.
Rob?
I'm willing to support the chief on this.
Okay. Any public comments? If you'd like to make a comment, this is your time to do so. I don't see any hands raised. So let's do a roll call, Michelle.
But we don't have a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we did. Is there a motion to adopt a resolution approving the revised salary steps and associated job description for the fire prevention coordinator classification?
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. So moved by Director Bloom and seconded by Director Jones. Roll call, please.
Director Bernstein,
I vote nay, and I'd like the minutes to reflect, please, my thoughts that this resolution has not been vetted by any members of the Board of Directors.
Director Bloom?
I'll vote aye on it. And it's my understanding I can kind of state a reason for the aye once there's a vote to no with a comment. Is that correct, Michelle?
You can state it now as Director
Yeah.
Bernstein just stated his reason for.
Yeah,
voting
so I
no.
would just say that it's adequately supported by the staff report as submitted by the staff.
Director Jones?
I vote aye, and I wanted to make note that in my opinion, I think it's been vetted quite well by the chief and HR. So
Director Solano?
I concur with the chief's recommendation since it's an operational decision involving staffing.
Director Crawley?
And I vote aye. I mean, the vetting by the board is, now, and so I think that, I concur with everyone else, but also with the fact that we're having the discussion, and if, if people wanted to, if directors wanted to have more detailed discussions, we could have done it here. So that motion carries with 4 ayes and 1 nay.
Okay, and for the record, I have one note from Director Bernstein as to his reason why he voted no, and I have a note for Director Bloom and Director Jones for reasons why they voted yes. Director Solano and Director Crawley, were you indicating that you wanted your reasons noted for the record? It wasn't made clear to me.
Michelle, I don't need an
Okay.
explanation.
Thank you.
I just wanted to show reason for my concurrence.
Thank you. Director Crawley?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with whatever Directors Bloom and Jones have said, but I do want to say that, that we've had the board discussion and we could have asked the questions too. So, but I mean, you don't have to add that, Michelle. I mean, it's fine.
I just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. So now we are on to item 11, which is adopt a resolution authorizing the revised minimum semi-monthly salaries, bottom of the range, for 10 classifications in the unrepresented management and confidential and chief officer groups. So this is Francine again.
I
Francine?
will, if I can just start out, Director
Sure.
Crawley, just especially segueing into the last discussion. This one was discussed quite a bit during the compensation study. So this one is a little bit different than our last one. And with that, I will turn it over to Francine. Thank you.
Thank you. So good evening again. So as the chief mentioned, this one, we did have considerable discussion with the board, also as reviewing the compensation study for Ralph Anderson. And this is just the main purpose for this is kind of right sizing the district's salary ranges. And just to give you the brief description, again, the salary range is the span between the minimum and maximum salary that an organization will pay for a specific job or jobs. Through the compensation study, it was identified that the district's salary range is very large compared to the comparator agencies. So for the unrepresented positions, the range is 50% from the top to the bottom. And then the average for the comparator agencies hovered around 30%. Sometimes for lower classifications, that salary range may be lower, 20%. And it is typical for managerial positions that the range is higher, but the average overall was around 30% for the range. We did correct 3 of the classification ranges during a previous board meeting. We brought forward the Administrative Services Director, Human Resources Manager, and Finance Manager, and adjusted those ranges to 30%. And these are the remaining classifications in the unrepresented groups that will kind of tighten up that span. And by right sizing the ranges, what also that it will do will kind of take off a portion of that unused bottom of the range, as well as reduce any compaction issues, because there won't be as much overlap between the ranges held by different positions. So what I have on the chart for you is the 10 classifications, the current minimum salary, which is also known as the bottom of the range. Highlighted in yellow, I have the proposed minimum salary, which would be the new bottom of the range. And then the max, which is on the right, which there will be no change to the maximum salary. And so I would ask that the board, if they have any questions regarding these adjustments, to please let me know. It was no additional fiscal impact for these, for kind of right sizing or bringing up the bottom of the range, because there wouldn't be anyone outside of the range if we move the bottom up to the proposed minimum salary that's highlighted in yellow. Some of them, any questions, if you have any?
Thank you, Francine. I saw Gary's hand up first, and then, well, Gary, is your hand still up?
Yeah, I took it down. She answered my question.
Okay, and
There's
then I
no
saw,
fiscal impact. Thank you.
okay, and then I saw Rob Solano's hand up. Rob, is your hand still up?
Yes, I had a question, but it was answered. Thank you.
Okay, and Chuck.
You're on mute, Director Bernstein.
Thank you. Francine, I count 10 positions here. Is it 10 people who are involved?
So there are 10 positions, and let me just look. So we have 1, 2, that one's vacant. So no, it's more than 10, it's more than 10 people that really won't be affected because they're above the current bottom, or the proposed bottom, sorry, but it's 1, 2, let's see. I believe it's 12, just by giving kind of an eyeball and trying to remember. I believe it's 12 incumbents that are in these positions. Some positions are multi-incumbent, like the division chief, senior HR analyst. Some positions are vacant, like the disaster response manager.
Okay, and the exact accuracy is not critical, but so we're talking about perhaps 12 people.
Yes.
How many of these people will get an increase as a result of this action?
0.
I'm sorry?
0.
0. Okay, so it doesn't affect anybody. I think you maybe said that before, but I wasn't sure if I understood correctly the full.
Yeah, there's no impact.
Okay, that's all I wanted to. Oh, yes, I just have a comment about this. On the first page, it mentions that this was kind of triggered by the study that Ralph Anderson did, and we did discuss this at length previously and so forth, unlike the previous item. So I would be supporting this because I feel like we've put the time in on this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I have a question, Francine.
Yes.
So right now, the upper range is not going to be moved up,
Yeah.
right? Which means that the spread between the minimum, the bottom range and the top is actually decreased, right?
Yes.
If this gets approved.
Yes.
So do you anticipate, or I guess what kind of movement do you anticipate for the upper range in the future?
So the upper range, I would just anticipate would adjust as a result of any negotiated wage increases. None of these positions were identified in the study as being, having a big kind of discrepancy over or under the median. So I don't anticipate that the upper range will adjust only with any negotiated increases approved by the board.
Okay, I mean, that's just gonna have to be reflected in the budget if that upper range changes. But I mean, in terms of timing, do you think any of that's gonna come up in the near future?
No, because this group just received a wage adjustment as part of the comp plan effective January 1. We would probably be speaking with the board towards the end of the year to see if there's any recommended adjustments for the next calendar year, but for this year, there'll be no changes. No further changes.
Yeah, for this year, but I'm looking at, even 3 years down the road. I mean, we just entered into an MOU with AFSCME for sure, right? And so I'm just thinking beyond that. I mean, not that we have, I just want us to be prepared, that's all, because the upper range can change just as easily because the spread between the bottom and the top has decreased now if we approve this.
Yeah, so if there was a change approved through a compensation plan or something like that, both the top and bottom are adjusted, so the range stays intact. So we're not increasing the range or decreasing the range by a wage class or COLA adjustment because both the top and bottom are adjusted. The range stays at 30%, just like every other increase that's been happening for this group. Both the top and bottom is adjusted and the range stays at 50%. The same would apply if we reduce the range. Is that what you're asking?
Well, kind of, but I mean, I'm okay with this right now.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or public comment? Michelle, I don't see any hands raised from the public. Do you?
I see no hands.
Okay. Okay, great. I don't see any hands raised from directors. So is there a motion to adopt a resolution authorizing the revised minimum semi-monthly salaries, bottom of the range for 10 classifications in the unrepresented management and confidential and chief officer groups?
So moved.
Is that Rob Solano?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second,
Okay, seconded by Director Jones. Vote, roll call, please, Michelle.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Bloom,
Aye.
Director Jones,
aye.
Director Solano,
Aye.
Director Crowley.
Aye. So that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And thank you so much, Francine, for your report and for answering the questions for the last two items. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we're on to item 12, which is to approve the 2023 standing committees and liaisons. And so this this report was prepared by Michelle based on the conversations that I've had and also based on my role as president to populate these committees. And so I just, first of all, thank you to the directors for volunteering to be placed in these various committees and as liaisons. So let me just kind of talk about the committees, because I know that there's concern that the strategic planning committee isn't populated, and that's because well, let me just make it very clear. The strategic planning committee is still there. It is a standing committee of the board, so that's not going anywhere. The reason that I didn't want to populate this at this time is that the strategic plan, whatever we come up with, should be done as a full board and not by just a committee. And I think the feedback I've gotten, and I agree with the feedback, is that the strategic planning committee for the past few years has really just been a committee where everything is dumped into instead of actually looking at things strategically. So as we move through the year and these things come up, and we're going to have a goal setting meeting on January 24th, and we can talk about our goals and how that might fit into a strategic plan. We would want to work with the chief to get his priorities and understand what he has planned as well for the district, and to kind of work together on creating a strategic plan which would involve the full board. So while the standing committee remains, this committee right now is not going to be populated. So the other three standing committees, finance, emergency preparedness, and human resources, are populated. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about that, but I just think it makes the most sense right now so that we're working together as a single unit, as the board and as the district. Are there any questions, Chuck?
Yes, I think we should have a strategic planning committee. I think strategic planning has been something that has not gone on in the district. Well, I don't know, maybe for 30 or 40 or 50 years, but it became a need that was identified maybe 8 to 10 years ago. We created a committee, and I think we started doing some stuff. We started looking long-term at our facilities. We started looking long-term at our apparatus. And I think even in the last year, we started looking long-term at what the profile of our staff should be and what kind of demographics we were looking for and to what extent we wanted to have our employees be representative of our communities and so forth. And I think that was those ideas were things that were coming out of that consciousness and awareness of strategic planning. The goal setting meeting that we're going to have for the board is, I'm almost certain, which what we always do, is very short term in nature. It's what would we like to accomplish in the next year or two or something of that sort, but it's not strategic planning. And we as a district spent over $3 million to try to become accredited like our neighboring agencies, and we failed. And the primary reason we failed is because we couldn't do strategic planning. And there was this notion that the strategic planning as a organizational wide activity preempted the authority of the top of the organization. And there was essentially, you know, not openly, but essentially a battle between, you know, autocratic rule and kind of a strategic position in the organization. I think it's an essential committee. I think it's something that should be looked at, and I don't think it's anything that the finance committee looks at. I don't think it's particularly HR committee or even the emergency preparedness committee. I just think for us to, and when we did a so-called strategic plan for the district, it was really, I can't remember what it was, something like 20 or 30 pages with 300 different strategic goals. I mean, it was just, it was a laughable kind of exercise. And for that, we were unable to achieve accreditation. And for us to go backwards and de-emphasize strategic planning, I think is a mistake. I absolutely agree with what Virginia said, that no committee should dictate a strategic plan. And I don't think that was ever done. But there are things that can be looked at. It's a sounding board. It's a place where the staff can bring ideas and have discussions and so forth. And I think it's an appropriate thing to do. And I think a board meeting with the public there is not the appropriate venue for people to be sitting around and saying, what if, and what could we do, and what's possible, and what if we change this, or what if we change that? That's something that should be done in a much more intimate setting, like a committee setting. So I would strongly urge the board to retain the committee.
Any other comments from directors? Thank you, Chuck, for that.
Yeah, Virginia.
Yes, Rob.
Yeah, I understand, you know, where you're coming from as president, but also Chuck makes some pretty good points also. And even though the strategic planning committee would meet maybe once or even twice a year, you know, relative to issues that do come up, I think we should assign, or you being board president should assign 2 people to be part of that committee in case we do have that type of situation. I mean, I can think of one huge thing is, you know, the our new Station 1, you know, a combined training facility and fire station. I mean, that's got to be definitely it's 3 years out, and you know, I think we should. That's just one issue right there. So you both make good points, but I think it should be a standing committee, and they may not meet every month, but I think there should be 2 directors that should be assigned to it, and you being board president, you should appoint them. Thank you.
Well, that doesn't mean, and thank you, Rob. I mean, I think you and Chuck share the same sentiments, but I also think that we can populate that committee at any time if needed as well.
Virginia,
Yes, Robert?
my comments is, for what it's worth, is that since I've been on the board, there's been a lip service been given towards strategic planning, and I think there has been a lack of understanding of really what strategic planning is and what process it needs to go through in order to arrive at some pre-described, you know, direction. And it's really, it starts from the board kind of really understanding where it wants to go, because it's like a pyramid structure. It's like water flowing downhill. If the top don't know, really understand what it wants to do from the top down in the organization, then how can it be capable of directing the operational structure of the organization in those directions? And so it takes both from staff level and communication and reflection, as well as ourselves as being supposedly representing the community in our district here, as to the long-term growth of the district and in those areas, and work from there. But I don't think we have, as far as I know, we haven't achieved that objective yet. We haven't begun to really take that part of planning seriously enough and ideally we do it in these meetings, these closed session meetings or retreat meetings that we should be having, to begin to think about the long term as we see it, and as our so-called constituents to see in the community, see the role and the purpose of the district, and be able to flow in that. And then you can have all the meetings you want to try to make that happen. But we first got to get an idea of what we want as a board. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Director Solano, Rob?
Thank you, Virginia. Chief, I know we had the assessment, had the audit and inspection from the independent group. When is that due?
They are going to be presenting it to us at our March meeting, is the plan.
March meeting.
Yeah.
I go back to the accreditation project that Manny was working on. I know we put it on hold. But he came up with 9 strategic goals during that project that he was working on, and it kind of generally hits on all areas of what our district should be. I know, do we formally adopt these, Michelle?
Formally adopt
The committee assignments?
No. When Manny had, when Manny had presented the 9 strategic goals on the accreditation project that he was working on, do we approve these? I know we had a discuss.
Those were not approved by the board.
They were not.
No.
Okay. Well, we have a pretty good starting point. He came up with 9, and I think we should at least have this as part of our discussion of Virginia when we have the study session of the accreditation.
Next week, you mean? Yeah.
on the 9 areas that Manny had identified in his project that was never completed. So thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, so I just had at least one question, is just a clarification of something Director Bernstein said, which is that the committee meetings are held outside the purview of the public. It was my understanding committee meetings are public meetings. Is that correct, or am I misunderstanding?
No, they are public meetings and they're noticed. So they're all noticed in Brown Act meetings. And especially the standing committees. I mean,
Yeah,
that's why we're
okay.
not voting to remove
Yeah,
the
no, I understand.
strategic planning committee.
Yeah, so I'm
Yeah.
just getting clarification because it's not really necessarily the out of the public purview benefit
No,
of having
no.
it. So that benefit's really not there. The second thing I would say is I kind of see it through the same lens that Robert does, which is, you know, I'm new to the board, but and I've asked about a strategic plan and there isn't one. And it seems to me that one of the key goals, objectives of the whole board should be to establish a strategic plan. And I think with a new chief on board as well, that, having the new chief's input as to what those 8, 10, 12 key goals are that drive the strategic plan all makes sense. I just kind of feel like it should be done as a full board perspective. And whatever has happened in the past decade or 2 decades or 3 decades, all I know is joining here today as a new board member, I don't have a strategic plan in hand. So I don't have something to work off of. And given that we don't have something to work off of, it seems to me we should drive that out of the goals as one of the primary goals of the board for the year is driving a strategic planning process, working with the chief. And then when there is something on the table that warrants review or inspection or further, committee action, assign the committee at that time. But I think in advance of having a process running to do the strategic plan, I don't think it's beneficial to have 2 board members off on the side working on a strategic plan in isolation of the full board. I'm not trying to restate Robert's. I'm not trying to restate Robert's comments, but that was my interpretation of it, and that's kind of my position on it.
That's spot on.
And so I'll add to that, that, we've had a strategic planning committee for the last few years, and we still don't have a strategic plan. And I do think that we need to try a different approach where the entire board is engaged along with the chief based on, the feedback he's received from his staff, which is one of the reasons that I wanted to schedule next week's meeting. I mean, we haven't had a goal setting meeting in, to my knowledge, for the last 2 years at least. So I want to get us back to basics so that we're all on the same page. And like I said, if we need to populate the strategic planning committee, then we can do that later on. But I think to get a fresh start on making sure that we're all on the same page and that, we've got the same vision, that it really what's best for our community and the 95,000 plus residents we represent. I just think that we all have to be in this together and that we all start on the same page. So that's the reason I did not populate this committee, and there's nothing to prevent us from doing so. The committee is still there. It's just not populated. Any other comments about the committee structure and the appointments? Okay, so then going on to the liaison positions. I think that we haven't had an Atherton resident on this board for, at least the last 3 years, Gary. So I know that it means a lot to Atherton residents that an Athertonian is actually on the board. So that's why I appointed you to that position. So thank you for taking that on. And I'm sure that you'll hear from your fellow Atherton residents. So please be prepared. Robert, I know how close you are to East Palo Alto. And I mean, gosh, if there's anyone who knows anything that's going on, anything and everything that goes on in your city, it is you. And I think that the relationships that you have there are so important. And especially now, I think we're going to probably have to deal with preparedness again. So I just think, Robert, you're the perfect person. So thank you for offering to be the liaison for East Palo Alto. Rob, I've kept you in the county areas because I know how much you like that as well. And you have a good relationship with, the supervisors, and I think you understand county issues. So, thank you for doing that. And I mean, you're a known entity there. Everyone knows you, so I think that they will feel comfortable continuing to interact with you. And Chuck, I know how much you care about Menlo Park and especially preparedness in your area as you've mentioned before. And I think that with a new council, I think you're having some institutional knowledge of just what's been going on in the city is going to be helpful to them from a preparedness perspective and just what's coming down the road. So thank you for being the Menlo Park liaison. And I am not on any of the cities or the county, but we do have the JPAs, and so I've assigned Rob to be the ambulance or the pre-hospital EMS JPA. So Rob, thank you for doing that. I think that with your tenure on the board, I mean, the issues that we've been dealing with, and as you know, tomorrow I think is their first meeting of the year. I don't know if you're going to be able to make it. I hope you can. But if you can't, then let me know. Robert, the San Francisco Creek JPA, I know how much that creek is, how important that is to you, given the proximity to the city and the flooding problems that it has. So thank you for being a part of, for being that liaison.
Virginia,
And yes,
Virginia,
Robert.
before you go on, before you leave that, the creek is, East Palo Alto has had $8-9 million to support build up the levees from across the freeway all the way out to the bay, and it just dawned on me that over this last storm that have came through, that a lot of the work that really needs to be done between now and, gosh, I would say next year, but I don't know how if it's going to get done, is from the creek all the way up to Stanford, back up in the hills back up there. And I'm willing to, and that's really in Chuck's area, his in Menlo Park, from the university and the Woodlands, the creek, all the way back up. And if Chuck want to work on that, since it's in his neighborhood, and it really impacted him in this closely in this last storm, I'd be willing to yield that position so he can, have his voice at those meetings, if he wants.
Chuck, would you like to do that?
Robert, that's very kind of you and thoughtful, and I appreciate that. I was just going to say, though, the first phase of the new work is going to be the Newell Street Bridge, which is East Palo Alto and Palo Alto. It'll be the second phase, it'll be the Chaucer Street Bridge. So I would recommend that you stay involved in it for the first part for a year, say, and maybe we can talk about this a year from now. But I think most of the discussion is gonna take place relating to what happens with that Newell Street Bridge.
Well, for all the conversation I've had with Elizabeth, who actually runs the Zeta director there, is that their emphasis was on the getting the Chaucer Bridge, because the university and the Newell Street Bridge is Palo Alto side, and it's an old bridge. But as far as I know, that because it's still way it sits up much higher than where the Chaucer Bridge is, that they were going to focus on, was going to move towards that direction, because how low it is within the creek structure. So, but anyway, I just threw it out there just in case. I'm willing to serve on it and continue to work on it. So for the upcoming year, if you're not,
Well, I would defer to you and Virginia on this.
Well, I mean, I think Chuck, if this is something that you want to do, I think it'd be great, but it's, you and Robert would have to decide on that. And it sounds like Robert would kind of defer that to you if you would like to do that, because that area where you are, I mean, both areas, quite frankly, are just so prone to flooding.
Well, if you look at the storm, once I got a call from the city manager of East Palo Alto asking for my help and our group help, and I participated in it. And so I went out and surveyed all up and down the creek, both East Palo Alto and Menlo Park, and on the streets of East Palo Alto. If you've been there, you see where how the creek flowed, where it really crested was near the was at the Chelsea Bridge, as well as the University and Woodland Road, the Creek Road, because there was heavy obstruction there, because the bridges are much lower than the one on Newell. I've seen that, and I saw that piece of it. So that's why, I know they're going to have to do some work further soon. If we have the storm next year, we're really going to be up the creek, so to speak. So, like I say, Chuck, I'm willing to yield if you want to take it on, because I know it's your neighborhood, right over there on Manhattan, Euclid. It was flooded over there. My friends live on O'Keefe and in that area, and it was flooded once the water came over. So
I stood and watched the river come down my street. Literally, the river was flowing down the street. Well, either way, I don't want to take away a role from Robert here, but I would do that if you'd like, Virginia. It's up to you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Rob has his hand raised. Rob, did you want to add to this conversation? You're on mute.
Yeah, Robert had mentioned Elizabeth. Robert, is Elizabeth with EPA or?
no, she's the executive director for the, I think I call Elizabeth, maybe I'm mispronouncing her name. I have a card here somewhere. She's the executive director for the JPA.
The Creek JPA.
The Creek JPA.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was confused. It was Lynn, and then I believe now it's Margaret Bruce now that's the director.
There you go, Margaret, right.
Okay, we got it. All right. I thought you were talking about someone.
No,
from
no,
EPA,
you're talking about
all right.
Margaret. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
You're old, you start getting senile, so that's what happened.
So Chuck, if you would like to be that liaison, I think the board would be fine with it. It sounds like it's up to you, really. It's not really my decision at this point. I'm happy with either one of y'all being the liaison, and I'm just glad that both of y'all would be great.
Well, again, I will, it's your call. I will accept whatever jobs you give me.
Robert, are you okay with having Chuck be the, I mean, it sounds like you are, and if you are, why don't we just.
You volunteered.
Sorry, I don't, you just, no, I don't, Robert, if you don't mind, then why don't we?
This is what this conversation is all about.
I know. So why don't we, if you don't mind, maybe make Chuck the Creek JPA liaison?
I think, to answer your question, yes, I have no problem with that.
Well, thank you. So Chuck, if you're willing to do that, then that's an assignment I would be honored to make.
Your call.
Are we ready for a
Okay.
motion?
Yes. So let me just say this, Rob Solano
Yeah.
has his hand up.
I'm sorry. We were talking about this before. I mean, is there a way that we as a fire board can get on this JPA? Because it not only affects EPA, it affects Menlo Park, of course, parts of Palo Alto, but, two major cities in our fire district, that are affected, including the unincorporated area of the county, that Weekend Acres, that we deal with too. So is there a way that we can, I don't know if we have to go through LAFCO or what we have to do, but, maybe, just like the pre-medical, maybe we need to put put someone on there or assign someone on there as we do with the pre-medical JPA, since it affects so many areas of our fire district.
Well, why
I
don't
don't
we
know how we
that?
do
'Cause
that.
That's a
you know.
little bit off topic right now, since we're just doing the assignments, but I do think that that's something that we should discuss as a future agenda item. So Rob, did you have another comment? Because you're raising.
No,
your hand.
I'm just putting my hand down, that's all.
Okay,
That's
so
fine, thank you.
Chuck, why don't you be the liaison for the Creek JPA? And let's put this on a future agenda item on the fire district, our involvement within with the JPA. So Michelle, that means that there will be a slight modification to the liaison assignments. And we'll put Chuck on or Director Bernstein on the San Francisco Creek JPA.
Noted, thank you.
And then we don't have, well, let's vote on this first. So then going over to I think that's it in terms of the assignments. So any other questions or comments? Thank you, Robert, for doing this.
Okay.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the committee assignments and the liaison assignments with the modification of putting Director Bernstein onto the Creek GPA as our liaison?
I so move.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, any further discussion or any public comment? I don't see any public hands raised for public comment. Okay, roll call, please.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Bloom,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Solano,
I,
Director Crawley.
Aye, so that motion carries. Thank you for serving on these committees and as liaison. So thank you. And for our last item on the regular agenda, it's to accept the district's board and committee meeting calendar for 2023. So Michelle, do you want to just talk about what you modified? I think basically it's just to remove the strategic planning committee for now from the normal calendar. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the only other outstanding item that I have a question on is for the July committee meetings, because it's the 4th of July.
Oh, okay.
They fall on the first Tuesday of July, and that'll be the 4th. So if you want to choose a different day, or we can wait till the day gets closer.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Because I'm not sure what the other recognized holidays are, if it's like July 3rd or July 5th, or that I just don't know.
July 4th.
July
Besides
4th is
July
the-
4th, right?
July
Besides
4th.
July 4th, that there could be another day.
No,
or
no,
something.
July 4th is during the week, so it's
I
July
know.
4th. you know.
So, okay, yeah, I mean, why don't we wait and let's just approve this, and then we can always amend the July item or July date. So is there a motion to approve the district's meeting calendar for calendar year 2023?
I'll move that we approve it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is that you,
Second.
Robert? Okay. Any comments from directors? Rob or Chuck?
Nope.
Any public comments? I don't see any. So let's do a roll call, please, Michelle.
Director Bernstein,
Aye.
Director Bloom,
Aye.
Director Jones,
Aye.
Director Solano,
I,
Director Crawley.
Aye, so that motion carries unanimously. So now we're on the reports and requests for directors for item 14. So I'll just kind of go around the screen, and I see Director Solano first. Rob, I mean, you may not even have anything, but you might, given the storms.
oh, we've been a busy. Thank you. Thank you, Virginia. Yeah, on the 3rd, I attended the Board of Supervisors ceremony, the swearing in of the new boards, and the election of Dave Pine as president, vice president is Warren Slocum. I went into the swearing in ceremony of the new sheriff, Christina Corpus. And I want to thank Chuck and Michelle for preparing the accommodations for the former command staff of the sheriff's office, and that's going to be now pushed back till January 23rd. And I spoke to Margaret Bruce, who's the director of the JPA, and she was great. She called me back. I left a message for her to call me. I was concerned about the January 1st peaking of the parts of the creek, and we spoke Virginia too. And so that's all I have to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary?
Yeah, so just a quick report. I listened in on the special meeting of the Atherton Town Council relative to their emergency declaration, and they did approve their kind of the formal approval of the emergency declaration that they'd made following the 12/31 event. And then secondarily, they went on to the purpose of that special meeting was also to discuss the new housing requirements. This has to do with the state laws for affordable housing in the town of Atherton. And yeah, as it relates to the fire district, I think the only thing it introduces for the fire district down the road is the potential that, you know, unlike it is today, Atherton could actually end up with some higher density housing. And it's a potential that some of that higher density housing could be, you know, kind of in a location right in the middle of just normal residential housing. So not where you typically expect it. And it's just a matter of the town of Atherton, you know, dealing with the new state laws that, you know, just don't quite fit to the, you know, kind of the layout and the financial metrics of the Atherton community relative to property costs and, you know, creating affordable housing given the land cost in the town of Atherton. So they're clearly struggling with it as a council. They were discussing 10 or 15 different properties, and that discussion's ongoing. I believe they have another public session coming up. They've been holding regular public meetings on it, but they have another one coming up in about a week or so on that subject. But as I mentioned, you know, for the fire district, I think the only thing it affects is that potential of higher density housing somewhere down the road within the town of Atherton.
Thank you, Gary. Robert, any reports or requests?
I don't have any requests at this point. I think I mentioned part of my activity in a previous conversation that as a volunteer, as a CERT volunteer for a community, being able to get a call from the city manager requesting assistance. And it was just assistance that I think anybody would, in those circumstances, situation would have responded to, and pretty much was a windshield assessment of the community. You get a call on New Year's Eve, around 3 o'clock, you kind of hard to muster up a lot of energy from a lot of folks, but everybody, they have either started their New Year's Eve bash a ball for an emergency, but it kind of yielded a relationship that I had with the city, strengthened that, I think, for our community CERT team. And I'm looking forward to a lot of further interaction with them, because I think they're primed at this point to really kind of understand what having a group of folks from the fire district, as well as a community that's focusing on disaster preparedness, that type of work in some form or fashion. So I'm pretty optimistic about the city and our working relationship with the fire district in order to achieve that objective. So I'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Chuck?
Yeah, I was just going to relate a little bit of my experience on that as well, which as a volunteer, which I wish I could be more enthusiastic about it, but I was very disappointed in the performance of Menlo Park and in terms of protecting its citizens. I sent something to the board already about this, where Palo Alto around 10 after 9, I think, had issued an alert that there was the water was going to overflow the banks around 10 of 10. And so I sent an alert to all the Willows volunteers, and they're at one point, I have about maybe 100 or 110 of them on the list to alert their people and so forth. And about 10:20, that is half an hour after the problem was going to occur, Menlo Park put out a notice to watch out for flooding or something. And it just was laughable. And the Willows area, literally, I mean, the creek was just flowing down the street, and people along Woodland were like little islands. So there was one woman around 70 who just had no idea how high the water was going to come. So she evacuated because she was afraid she wouldn't be able to get out of her house. There was another house that was surrounded by water, and there were probably 40 volunteers, 50 volunteers out there helping them sandbag and so forth. And Menlo Park, as you might imagine, just when you need it, they always had sandbags down at the little triangle that's just down from the Chaucer Bridge. But this year they didn't put sandbags or sand out there, so the residents didn't have it. They were driving over to Station 77 and down to Burgess, and then they finally ran out of sand and so forth. And of course, the Menlo Park city manager's out of town, and I mean, it just was. Here I am, the liaison to Menlo Park and so forth. So I'm probably not starting out on a good foot here with them, but no, I was very disappointed. But I like the fact that people were helping people and they had this sense, and now they seem to have a rededication to the idea of doing something. We were very lucky there wasn't a power failure, because had there been a power failure, there would have been no communications at all. People wouldn't have been able to look at the creek monitors or any of those kinds of things. We are so dependent on power for everything we do. And there's really no planning, no support, but people rise to the occasion and do it on their own. So I'm looking forward to getting this volunteer coordinator. I hope it's somebody who'll get their hands dirty and really talk to human beings. Because that's what we need, is people who can organize people. And the sooner we get that in place, the better it's going to be. Anyway, yeah, I'm glad to have the opportunity to work on this a little bit more formally with both Menlo Park and the JPA. We desperately need it. And I think now there's an awareness. The pandemic was a kind of a misuse of emergency preparedness, because there wasn't much that volunteers could do. They could look out for, make sure people had food and things like that. But there really was, as the pandemic wore on, there wasn't a lot they could do. But I think this flood just woke up everybody to the kinds of needs that are there. And the reason I was asking Chief about where the rescue was positioned is, as I watched right in front of the Four Seasons Hotel, that fill up with water and so forth. We could almost have used boats there, and to think that they might be up in San Mateo or something troubled me. So I just would hope that we don't release them to other places until we've served our local residents. Anyway, that's really my report. I had some requests and so forth, but I'm going to save them for our planning meeting next
Okay.
week.
Okay, thank you. So the final item, the president's report. Yeah, I pretty much have similar comments as everyone else has. I just heard from residents around the district, just like, especially in Weekend Acres, how a lot of homes were flooded and the creek was overflowing. And, I actually went out there and took a look, and I also went to the bike bridge on San Mateo Drive, and the creek there was, was rushing just like the creek up in Weekend Acres. And I saw pictures of the creek and how deep it was in East Palo Alto. And, it always concerns me that it's just like that, right? But, I'm just glad that we didn't we didn't, we were not in a situation where we didn't have power and all of that compared to the coast. So, you know, I'm very glad. And I think that people were very grateful that our crew was out there. So Chief, again, thank you. If you can thank everyone, that would be fantastic. The one thing though, and Rob, maybe this is something, it's kind of a request, as the county liaison. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I could sense Chuck's frustration regarding alerts. But I have to tell you, I don't know how effective SMC alert was, at least in our area and for sure on the coast. And I don't know if there's any way, Rob, if you're talking to the supervisors or anyone, or Mike Callaghy, anyone, if you can find out, you know, what happened. Maybe there was just spotty reception in other areas, but I mean, we got some notifications. But I mean, I'll just give you an example, and this is not, it has nothing to do with our area, but it's, you know, troublesome nonetheless. There was that boulder that fell near Devil's Slide. It was like a 6 foot circumference boulder. And I don't think we ever got any SMC alert about that. Nothing. And I'm on SMC alert. So, and I know that the grand jury, I think a couple years ago, did a report on the effectiveness of SMC alert, or I don't know if it's only the effectiveness, but also encouraging people to enroll and to get these alerts. But so Rob, I don't know. I mean, I hate to put this on you now, but just if you hear of anything or ask about it, I think, you know, I got questions about why didn't we get the alert on this, you know, here and on the other side of the hill. So that, I think that may be a county problem. And, you know, there's obviously connectivity issues that were rampant, even in, you know, west over here, not over in our area, but just, I think Weekend Acres, I think was fine. But, you know, if you went even to Portola Valley and Woodside, they had, some places didn't have power. But the point is that if we're relying on the alert system and it's not working well, you know, what can we do, right? So if you,
Virginia?
yes.
Oh. Did somebody else want to speak? Yeah.
Oh, no, I just asked Rob if
Oh.
when he had a chance, if he could ask about it. And maybe it's just me, but I usually get all the alerts.
Yeah,
I'm hoping that we can take this unfortunate event of this flood, this storm, to really, because, you know, for years we have a setup. We have Station 2 over in East Palo Alto has this monopole that's wired up for some type of alert. We had talked about putting it in other strategic areas throughout up the creek, like and as well as the dam. We got it up there, but really there may be an opportunity to kind of whatever we can game plan we put together to focus with the cities to really start pushing the alert system that we had started to work on, but we kind of put it to the side because SMC, I got a lot of SMC alerts, but it was mainly for our area, not for anything anywhere else, you know, until after the storm had passed. So I think it's really, I know, and I'm maybe optimistic, but I think our city, East Palo Alto, is ready, and I think Menlo Park is ready because the Belhaven area is kind of feeling kind of isolated from things. And I'm sure other parts of Menlo Park. So I think maybe a time for us to kind of revisit that through the emergency prep committee with the chief to look at trying to push that system.
The LRAD system?
The LRAD system in the area. I know for East Palo Alto, I've been talking to them. So it may be, again, it's an unfortunate situation, but it may be an opportunity to try to get that message back out there to them.
Thank you, Gary, and then Rob.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we have a great case study for things that the emergency prep committee needs to address and work with the chief on. And, you know, relative to, you know, some form of after action, I think there's two parts of that. One is what's within the control of the district and how the district responded. And then one is how did we serve, how's the communities we serve affected and the things outside of them that we should try to influence. I can also tell you, we have a home down in Carmel that was in one of the evacuation zones in Monterey County. And granted, they had a little bit more time to prep because the storms hit a little later down there, but their messaging and alerting was flawless relative to from one end of the Salinas River all the way down to where it hits the ocean. The Carmel River too, they just covered the whole gamut of what was happening upstream and when it was going to hit downstream and what was happening down at the lagoon in Carmel, which is the area that we were affected by. And and I don't even live in the area, and I was getting all their alerts. We're in their system down there, but their alerting process was really just end to end on all the major rivers. I think they were monitoring 5 different streams and rivers that were all causing different issues at different points in time and coordinated with their evacuation zones. So I think, we had to take a look at, kind of how that transpired. And Rob, I can get you some of the data on that and some of the alerts that I received there if you want to share them with the county here. But they were, they far exceeded what I saw coming out of San Mateo County for sure. So definitely some room for improvement there. But I think overall, this is, something the emergency prep committee can take up. And, we should, while it's all fresh, we should organize our thoughts as a group and as a board so that we start influencing policy in the different jurisdictions that we play in. And make sure we share our findings with them accordingly.
Thank you, Gary. Rob?
I think everyone's come up with some excellent points for discussion. The background to this San Mateo alert system used to be Roam Secure, and then they went to SMC Alert, and they invested in, which Virginia knows, is Zone Haven, which if you type in your address, you'll get all the alerts relative to your address. And this is a question I'm going to pose to the chief to kind of get an answer for us. When Roam Secure and supposedly San Mateo County alert system, it has an administrative function that an agency can go in there and put out a message or an alert. And Chief, could you see if the cities have that capability and we as a fire district do also? Is that something that you could report to our emergency prep committee to see? Because I remember, back when I was with the terrorist task force, that there was an administrative function. In fact, we could get into it and put an alert out through the San Mateo County alert system. So if you could find that out, that'd be great, Chief, to see if the cities or the surrounding cities have that capability.
Yeah,
Still.
I've made a note. I will check on who's got the ability to send the 3 different things, WIA, which is over our cell phones, the SMC alert, and then also Zone Haven alerts.
Great, thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Rob. Gary?
Yeah, I was just going to say, SMC Alert, they just changed the underlying software platform for that system yet again. So that shift was just
True.
taking place as the new year came along. It has, in the architecture of that system, it has the capability to authorize people to send alerts to groups and subgroups of individuals. I have the ability to send alerts out to the search and rescue team as an example, notify them of call outs. The Task Force 3 uses the system to notify members of Task Force 3 deployments. So the architecture is there. I think it's a question for the chief to pursue is, who's authorized to do which zones and which areas. And, in the broader categories, it's my understanding one of the reasons for the change of the system is the cost model of the prior system did not encourage a lot of alerts. Yet the community wants a lot of alerts, and some members of the community don't want a lot of alerts. So it's, there's Yeah, there's, how do you satisfy everybody in the balance between too much alerting versus not enough alerting? But I think, yeah, the platform itself, I know, can support what's being discussed here. The question for the chief to pursue is the authorizations. And it's a matter of the right people having an account and being authorized to issue them. It's not a matter of technology by any measure.
Thanks, Gary. Chuck?
I-
So
I-
this is my president's report, y'all. So thank you for helping me make my
You-
report.
I just have a follow-on question for Gary. I had heard, although it didn't seem to interrupt my getting messages, but I had heard that when they changed platforms, people who had to resubscribe or re-sign up for SMC,
Re-register.
re-register or something. Do you know if that's true?
It's my understanding that all the existing registrations that were in the old system were migrated to the new system. I did not re-register. They had to give me a new administrator account to be able to send messages. But as far as the receipt of messages, my understanding is they did migrate all the connections.
Well, when a lot of people said that they didn't get messages, I was thinking maybe it was because of that. But again, my messages were uninterrupted.
I think they didn't get them because they weren't sent.
I see.
Yeah. Anyway, so, okay, so Ron,
So much for your president's
if
report.
you hear anything about the SMC alert system, let us know. But that, I mean, that's a request.
Hey, I'm on it.
And-
I'm
and
on
this-
it. I'm on it.
Yeah, and the same chief, I'd heard that from residents that, they weren't getting the alerts. So whatever information you can find out. The other thing that I wanted to put on, and I don't know, Michelle, how we do this procedurally. We used to have an item for future agenda items. And I don't know what happened, but I would like to put that on there again so that, for example, we can, put on there about the JPA, the Creek JPA, and what it means to be a member, or why aren't we a member? Should we be a member? I think the model may not be the best model, but we just don't know. But what's the best way to do this? Should we just vote on this at the next meeting or what?
Well, I can certainly add an item for proposed agenda items. Although
We
there
used to
is a-
have that.
But there is also a process laid out in the board policy manual about how to get items on the agenda. And they can
Yeah, there
also,
is.
yeah, but if
So,
you want to see an item on the agenda, I can add it and have it on there each month.
okay, so is there, well, so maybe you and I can work on that and look at the board policies. Just, I need to review that, that particular policy more in detail. But if there's any way, is that something that we can put on, and we may not want to, I don't know, on the January 24th board meeting agenda? Michelle?
That's up to you. I think it should be a separate item. I think I could just go ahead and put it on the future agendas. We can talk about it offline.
Okay, okay. Okay, but I mean, I wanted to get everyone else's thoughts about that item, which we used to have.
If you want to have a discussion on it, then we should have it on as a future agenda item.
Okay, then let's do that. That would be a request that I would ask. That, that we can deal with. But I mean, otherwise, I really don't have that much to say. I mean, I'm just glad that,
Public
Well,
comment.
what was that?
I said you got public comment.
Yeah,
before you
yeah,
close
no,
this
I know,
out.
but I'm just saying, I'm just glad that people were as safe as they can be, and I was impressed by the work and our professionals, and also the community. I mean, it was clear to me that they really cared. So, and thank you to the board for just being in touch and making people feel secure that, we're out there and we're talking about these problems and how we can solve them if we can make life a little easier when the next storm comes. So thank you. So that's it for my report, and we'll move on to public comment number 3. If there are any members of the public that would like to make a public comment now, please raise your hand or press, is it *9 or *6? I always forget.
*9.
*9. And I don't see any hands raised. So is there a motion to adjourn?
You don't need a motion to adjourn?
Oh, well, then will adjourn the meeting, our board meeting. Thank you to everyone at 9:58. So thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll
Thank
see
you.
y'all
All right.
next Thursday.
Have a good evening.